Take a breath, let the day slip. The noise of the world, the clatter of urgency, the hum of doing. Let it dissolve like sugar in warm tea. Tonight, we walk a quieter road. Listen not for the roars of stadiums, nor for whistles slicing through air like arrows, but for something gentler, a sound softer than applause, but louder than silence. The hush of greatness. For what does greatness sound like when it is quiet? When it does not shout, when it does not demand to be seen, but simply is, like dawn creeping over rooftops, like a river carving paths through centuries, like a boy in Rosario running under flickering streetlights, a ball tucked close, his world tucked closer. So, rest your mind, let your shoulders unclench, let your breathing become even in and out, in and out. And now, let us begin. There was a boy. He did not shout. He did not fight for the light. Instead, he carried it quietly inside the way he moved. Born in Rosario, Argentina, not of privilege, not of legend, but of modesty. A city stitched in brick and sky, bright with passion, draped in memory, yet is here he arrived, with the eyes of an old soul, and the feet of something not quite explainable. He was Lionel Andres Messi, a name that would someday fold newspapers and flit across screens. But in the beginning he was simply Leo. To his mother, Celia. To his grandmother, who smiled as only grandmothers can, smile full of belief before proof. To his father, Jorge, who worked not on sight but on faith. And the boy, he was quiet, painfully shy, often watching, rarely speaking, but with the ball. He was fluent in every language hope speaks. On cracked pavement, he would dribble past shadows. Through alleyways, he would practice the art of becoming invisible, not to hide, but to pass through the world unnoticed. Like wind whispering through chapel doors, every boy in Argentina grows with dreams laced in leather. But not every boy dances with the ghost of destiny. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the world was unaware, but a grandmother knew, and this boy, this soft-spoken boy, began a journey not toward the spotlight, but beside it. Now breathe again, slowly, a world away from chaos. We linger not on noise, but on pace, and in that quiet world of growth, there was also pain, not pain of injury, but absence. Something within young Leo's body had decided to slow down, a diagnosis, not shouted, not dramatic but clipped in hesitance, a growth hormone deficiency. 3 words, heavy and silent. At 11 years old, so small, so light, a frame that looked as if it might break beneath expectation, and yet it didn't. Single quotes. Every night, a needle. Every dose, a promise that maybe, only maybe, he could grow. A quiet war, waged nightly in shadow, not against rivals in jerseys, but within. Others sprinted, he glided, others shouted, he watched, but the ball obeyed him. Few touched it as he did, with reverence, like it was something sacred, an extension not of foot, but thought. At Newell's old boys, they saw it, a light that didn't flash like lightning, but glowed like ember, impossible to ignore. Even if he never demanded to be seen, still, talent alone could not pay for the medicine, nor could wonder sustain a full belly. The costs began to build, and so did the desperation. Rosario embraced his spirit, but it could not fund his future. A family held its breath. A father made calls. A prophecy needed a patron that arrived, not as a grand letter, but a whisper across oceans: Barcelona. And so, a boy, barely a teenager, crossed the Atlantic, left home for a place where he did not know the language, where football meant something colder, sharper, where matches were faster, pressures harsher, but dreams speak a common tongue, and Leo's dreams were fluent. He joined La Masia, a castle for children chasing greatness, dorm rooms filled with longing, morning drills in duet silence, meals not with family but with fate. And the boy, he said little, a sentence here, a word there, but again the ball spoke. Tap, tap, slide. Curl. He did not force his way forward, he slipped there. Now breathe once more, even slower. You're further from your day now, softer, drifting, and Leo, he was beginning to dot not a bang, but the exhale at the start of a poem, one stanza at a time. And still, no fireworks, no parades, just a boy with quiet feet and the loudest of destinies. Rosario awakens with the smell of bread and the jangle of shop shutters rising. A city, neither grand nor sleeping, a place where the sun peeks through long alleys and life hums gently. Constantly. In one such alley, a boy chases a ball, not hurriedly, but as if dancing with it through still water. His name is Lionel, but in those early years, he is simply Leo, smaller figure among brothers, nestled quietly into the world, carrying more silence than most. He is not loud, but he notices everything: the bounce of a football against a curb, the flicker of a shadow before sunset. His attention is devotion. Argentina does not ask children if they love football. It simply hands them a ball and waits for them to respond. And Leo, he answered completely. He played everywhere, in the living room, in the streets, even in his sleep, surrounded by echoes of Maradona, by murals that whispered legends into dreaming ears. But legends, even those whispered by banners and radio broadcasters, cannot protect a child from the sounds that come in doctors' offices. He was 9, maybe 10, already smaller than the rest, but now with a name for it: growth hormone deficiency, a phrase that doesn't pierce like thunder, but lingers like mist. It is not fire, but fog. It meant that he would stay small unless he received treatment, regular injections, fear condensed into a syringe each night, a needle each morning, a hope renewed like the sun, quietly, reliably. His parents were offered no promises, just the road ahead, paved in maybes and lined with cost. The medicine was precious, but it was not free, and the family, steady, loving, yet shadowed by limitation. Jorge Messi, Leo's father, worked in a steel factory, his hands thick with callus, his thoughts filled with calculation. How many hours, how many shifts does it take to build a ladder tall enough for your son's dreams? Celia, Leo's mother, shielded him from worry with food, with prayer, with the kind of warmth that wraps around winters and fights off fear. And then his grandmother, she saw it before the world did. When he played, she clapped when others were hesitant, nodded when the coaches doubted. She believed not out of loyalty, but out of clarity. She told everyone, he's different. And in time, they began to see what she saw. At Newell's Old Boys, a local club whose red and black kit smelled of deeply embedded hopes, coaches noticed how he moved. He wasn't fast, but he glided. He wasn't big, but he never tilted, while other children kicked. He whispered with the ball. He didn't run over the grass. He floated upon it. They called the boys in Leo's age group the machine of 87, fast, fluid, feared, But inside that powerful engine, Messi was a quieter spark illuminating differently, without fanfare. He scored hundreds of goals in their youth division, not with celebration, but with calm the way rainfall doesn't need applause. And still, each goal was a tick of the clock counting. Down time before money ran out, treatment costs began to strain. More than $1,000 every month, more than what belief alone could cover. A choice loomed. Stay and let dreams dim, or leap and pray that the sky holds you. So Jorge reached out to River Plate, to Boca Juniors, to anyone with ears and funds. Some listened, none answered until a whisper from across an ocean, from Spain, from a club curious about a boy barely 5 feet tall who played like a gust of wind with laces tied to its feet. It came from FC Barcelona. They invited Leo for a trial. The offer was not gold-plated. There were questions and hesitations, but it was a door cracked open, and so the family gathered what hope they could, boarded planes with dreams, folded into suitcases, and flew westward to next chances. At 13, Leo said goodbye not like a soldier, but like a flower leaving soil. He was not brave, he was simply faithful to Barcelona, to La Masia, to the net that waited to catch him, just in case he did, indeed, fall. And in that goodbye, Rosario watched a sun drift softly towards something unimaginable, warned the space he left behind. They arrived just before dawn. Barcelona still kissed by shadow, the Mediterranean wind carrying scents of salt, stone, and ancient ambition. And into that waking city stepped a boy, small, squinting, quiet, a suitcase in one hand, an entire family's hope in the other. La Masia awaited. Not a castle, not a cathedral, but to Leo, it may as well have been both. Its walls held stories, told not in words, but in movements, of passes, of shots, of possibility. And now it held him, this boy from Rosario. Spoke Spanish, but not this Spanish. Who moved like music but remained mute in nearly every room at first. He said little, his voice scarce, his comfort scarce still. Among taller boys, among louder talent, Leo folded inward. He would eat, he would nod, he would train, then drift into sleep, before the moon finished rising. But in the hours between drills and dusk, he listened, and when the ball returned to his feet, he became the teacher. At first he was merely the small Argentine, the new one, the tiny shadow seen only at drills. But slowly they began to tilt their heads, their drills interrupted by something curious. A boy who could not outmuscle, yet could not be caught. A boy who didn't speak, yet made the ball confess. They called him La Pulga, the flea, not for his pestering, but for how he clung to space between footsteps, between tackles, between what the eye could follow. He was smaller, not just compared to other boys, but even to memory. Yet when he touched the ball, the field seemed to shrink to his size. Tap, turn, feint, slip, slip, again, each motion sacred and soft, like calligraphy painted on a moving canvas. While other boys roared when they scored, Leo simply turned, head down, as though embarrassed to interrupt the silence with brilliance. His coaches tried to define him, but how do you categorize a breath of wind wearing cleats? They didn't know where he fit. Forward, winger, midfield. He didn't chase position, he shaped it. Then came that moment on the napkin. Contract talks had wavered. Uncertainty haunted hallways, but Karl's Rexic, in quiet urgency, took a simple napkin and wrote the promise that Leo would stay. That napkin, now a relic, was once just paper, but like Leo, it held something more than it seemed, with signatures scrawled in hope. The path continued, and next a big stage waited Frank. Ricard saw something worth nurturing. Glimpse of dusk in a sky mostly midday, subtle, rare. So he called up the boy, still unread, still quiet, but Ricard whispered, "It's your time." And so he made his debut, October 16th, 2004, a gangster spaniel, late substitute. Short sleeves, swallowed steps, no thunder, no fire, just a soft murmur from those watching. Is that him? He brushed the pitch like one, unsure of gravity and, yet never off balance. Then, in a match against Albacete, he scored, a chipped finish, a lofted lullaby, sent beyond a helpless keeper. Ronaldinho, arms wide. Laughter soaring, the first great magician blessing this new sorcerer on arrival. The stadium erupted, but Leo, he offered only a smile, small, sincere, almost apologetic, as if to say, "Forgive me. I was just playing." And so the story began to unspool, not in banners, not in declarations, but in motion. The way he moved was the way some pray, quiet lips, open hands, and feet that danced across the grass, like they'd known this world before, like the ball and the boy had met in some prior life and promised to find each other again, here in Barcelona, in boots, in whispers, and always in silence. Some said he was too quiet to lead a team, too small to dominate a league, too humble to become the centerpiece of an empire. And yet, within those disbeliefs lay the seeds of inevitability. Because while others arrived to thunderclaps, Leo Messi only needed footsteps. Soft, certain, undeniable. By 18, he wasn't merely present at FC Barcelona, he had begun to shape its breathing in every shadow he moved through. The light bent slightly in his direction. Next to him stood a mentor, a brother by brilliancer, Onaldinho. Joyous, electric, loud, the samba to Messi's lullaby. Ronaldinho laughed with the ball. Messi listened to it, and in that contrast, a bond formed, one igniting, the other enduring. Ronaldinho passed him goals, both literal and invisible. A through ball here, a wink there, and always encouragement without envy. In 2007, it happened, against Real Madrid, a rivalry cut from legends and Smoker Young. Messi took the field and etched his name across the age-old pages, 3 times. Left foot, right foot, left again. And as the third nestled into the net, the world no longer asked who is he, but rather how. Not 1 goal to stun, 3 to declare. Still, even in glory, he refused to shout. Only a raised hand, a modest celebration, as though apologizing for unbalancing the universe with such ease. And then came Pep Josep Guardiola, a conductor of silent symphonies, philosopher who saw the game as poetry and Messi as its strongest stanza. Pep didn't train Messi. He rearranged the world around him so that Messi could simply be. The structure of triangles, of space, of possibilities, folded tightly into narrow passages, and in the center, not a striker, not a midfielder, something else. A false 9, false in designation, but truer in expression than any position before. It meant Messi could begin in absence, then bloom, disappear, only to reappear exactly where fate needed him next, and in that role, he danced. He unraveled defenses by refusing to be definable. 2009, a year whispered among believers, La Liga, Copa del Rey, Champions League, Spanish and European Super Cups, Club World Cup, and the Ballon d'Or, or sextet, a sextet of triumphs. A crown of quiet coronations, only 20-2, and then a moment, the goal against Getafe, a mirror motion of Maradona's masterpiece. Yes, but where Diego roared, Messi sighed. He picked up the ball in his own half, not with urgency, but with inevitability. 2 defenders, then 3, then 5. His touch never hurried. His body never strained. It was as though the earth tilted to assist him, as though defenders forgot how to interrupt grace. He finished with a calm impossible to describe, and ran not toward the crowd, but towards solitude. What thundered in the stands merely fluttered in his chest, and so came the accolades, Ballon d'Or, or another, then another, then another. Each one landed not like confetti, but like a snowfall, quiet, steady, inevitable. Reporters asked about them. He nodded, smiled, faintly, sometimes no words at all, as if to remind us. The doing was enough, he continued, scoring with the regularity of sunrise, assisting with the vision of prophecy, each match a verse, each pass a sentence. He wore defenders like heavy cape sand, still carried the game forward, and all the while no headlines chased by ego, no scandals surfacing, just him, his family, and his boots' legacy, carved not in the noise of declarations, but in the hush that follows awe, because greatness, at its truest, doesn't arrive with a blast. It simply continues until silence is its crown. Some rivalries are born loud with lightning in the air and thunder in every tackle. Others begin like a breath held between seasons, an inhale made of tension, an exhale only history can understand. Lionel Messi did not ask for a rival. He only played, but the world shaped one for him. Cristiano Ronaldo. Tall, sculpted, fire-eyed. Where Messi curved, he cut. Where Messi whispered, he howled. Where Messi saw, Ronaldo declared. Together, they wove a paradox, a duel that never needed contact. 2 painters on opposite canvases, speaking in different dialects. Of brilliance, Messi the moonlight to Ronaldo's sunflower. For nearly a decade, Spain held them both, and in that time El Clásico became more than a match. It became myth. Barcelona versus Real Madrid, red and blue versus white and gold. And in the eye of that storm 2 men. SSI did not roar into those games. He stepped into them as if he were returning to a familiar book, one he had written quietly, line after line. He scored in those games with the same silence he used everywhere else. But against Madrid, each goal hummed louder, because rivalry has its own acoustics. 337 appearances against all La Liga sides, and yet the numbers from these matches carried a breathless gravity. 20-6 goals, 14 assists. Mouths opened in disbelief, hearts clenched in admiration. April 23rd, 2017, a date punctuated by a gesture. Final minute score, tied at 2. MESS. I ghosted into space, emerged at the goal's edge, met a low cross like a sentence, completed in perfect script, and then that image, the jersey raised name facing the crowd, as if to say, remember, not from ego, but from essence, because in all his humility, that night he reminded them this story was still his, and all the while Cristiano countered. With power, with precision, with the kind of mastery that respects no margin for modesty. But Messi never sprinted into that heat. He let the game come to him, one move, then two, then an inevitability. Between the roars of Ronaldo's cannon, Messi was the drifting violin beneath a quiet chorus too constant to ignore. Their dichotomy was not conflict, but contrast. Each raised the other by existing, and as Messi stacked records, he did so like a patient craftsman, careful, unshaken. Liga's all-time top scorer, a total over 470, more assists than any other before or after, hat-trick after hat-trick, each arriving like morning, expected, but still beautiful, and yet never a scream, never a cry for attention, just a boy still playing a game with the same humility found in dusted alleyways of Rosario. Outside the pitch, others changed. He did not. Where fame carved louder lives, Messi remained the gentle drumbeat. He loved quietly Antonella, his childhood friend, now his wife. The story of a small boy who grew next to a girl and built a world from memory and devotion. They married in their hometown, not in palaces, but among familiar bricks and basilicas, among people who remembered Leo as simply Leo. Pictures of his family began to show more and more, his children, his sons, each photo a verse from the life he chose to protect. Not once did he seek the stage. Beyond the stadium, to modeling lights, to glamour, he preferred whispers, preferred the company of feet and grass over microphones and red carpets. And in that way, his legend came even quieter, even deeper, because nothing ages more gracefully than restraint, and nowhere is restraint more powerful than beneath the bright sky of football's fiercest rivalry. So many who watched said it was the greatest duel ever. Played not fought with fists, but with moments, and Messi. He never saw it as a duel. He saw it as a rhythm. One he followed, as always, by touch, not sound. They say to wear the flag is to carry more than cloth, it is to shoulder hopes, histories, and hungry ghosts. For Lionel Messi, every time he stepped onto the pitch in Argentine blue, he wore more than a kit. He wore a country's memory, its comparisons, its expectations, its Maradona-shaped silhouette trailing behind his boots. From the beginning, for all the love he earned in Catalonia, Argentina was different. It was home, and yet not always shelter. He began early, 17 years old. A debut for the Albiceleste splashed in pride, and just moments later, a red card. A beginning bound in symbolism, triumph, and complication. In the same breath, still, he wore the badge again, and again, and again. 2006, Germany, his first World Cup. Young, eager, lightning bottled too tightly. He sat the quarterfinals on the bench and watched as Argentina fell to penalties. Many thought, he'll return, he has decades ahead. But football doesn't return favors. It only gives chances, and not always twice. In 2010, he did return. South Africa waited. Maradona, now not just a shadow, but a coach, an icon watching closely. And yet the dream turned dust. A 4-0 loss to Germany, cold, clinical. Messi. Brilliant in movement, yet no goals. Whispers began, too quiet, too European, too not dash, Diego, and in Argentina, such whispers grow teeth quickly. But Messi kept coming back. Not for the critics, but for the crest dos 2014 Brazil. Summer coated in sun and prophecy. Argentina began to believe again. Messi was electric, group stage dribbles defying time, left foot slicing through hope. 4 goals in 3 matches. He carried them, gently but completely. to the final dot, and in the final Germany again. Their fates intertwined, like old chords in forgotten music. Extra time, an opening, a chance. Gonzalo Higuain missed. Later, Messi's shot grazed past the post, close enough to break skin. Then the goal. They couldn't answer at the whistle. He stood alone, not broken, but bent under what ifs. Golden ball awarded, a trophy, but not the trophy, and in many eyes, a king uncoronated. Arling Yiwu, Copa America, again, the final again. Defeat, Chile. In penalties, 2016. The Centenario, a rematch. Another final, another set of penalties. Another heartbreak. Messi stood there, eyes to sky, hearts buried behind ribs. He missed in that shootout, and for the first time, he cracked after the match. He said it softly, "I'm done." Resigned, exhausted, as if the jersey had become a second skin that stung too much to wear. Argentina wept, and not gently. Some in confusion, some in anger, most in shared despair. But football, like rivers, finds its way back. A campaign began. "Don't go, Leo." Painted walls pleaded, children held signs, former players called, and slowly so did he. Return not for vindication, but for unfinished love. Another World Cup would come, another fall. 2018. Russia, a team adrift, a dream unstable. MESS, I still. Genius. Still gentle, but not enough. And still he did not leave. Then came 20-1, the Copa America in Brazil, in the legend's twilight, on fields where the ghosts had nearly strangled joy. But this time, they didn't. Argentina surged, Messi's assisting, scoring, carrying, and coursing. Semi-final 2 assists. Goal by penalty. Bleeding through his sock, still gliding. And in the final against Brazil, in Maracana, 90 minutes, 1 Angel Di Maria. Goal. Final whistle, and for the first time fell for joy. Messi dropped to his knees, not in disbelief, but release, and the country that once doubted now wept alongside him, not because he won, but because he stayed, because when the nation questioned him, he never answered with his mouth, only with his feet, and in that silence, a promise fulfilled. He didn't become Maradona, he became Lionel Messi, a legend all his own, not through thunder, but through persistence, through grace without applause. The boy from Rosario, once told he might never grow tall enough to matter, had just lifted his first major trophy with his home nation. It felt right, felt full, but the story still had verses left. They said it couldn't end like this, not with tears, not in shifting colors, not in exile from the cathedral he built brick by touch. But endings seldom ask permission. They simply arrive, quiet and final. Barcelona, his home, his church, his proving ground of miracles. And yet it slipped away, not in anger, but in economics, a financial fog too thick to navigate, even for gods. At the press conference, he wept, not the theatrical tears of performance, but the silent unraveling of a man who had poured his youth into soil that could no longer hold him. The room did not breathe as he spoke. His voice cracked, soft with devastation, not for titles missed, but for the goodbye he never imagined practicing. Then came Paris. A new city. New lights. New badge pressed against his chest. They welcomed him, cheered his name in accents unfamiliar. They called him king, but he still felt the absence of home air. PSG was not a betrayal, nor a conquest. It was memory being rewritten, a different script, and still he played. though not with the same rhythm not. Yet, greatness needs roots, and some take longer to grow. But he passed, he moved, he scored, his bond with Neymar. With Mbappe wove moments, though sometimes misshaped, into beauty, and there in his new threads, he collected another Ballon d'Or, his 7th, a number preposterous not so gently earned, each balloon of gold adding no weight to his walk, only more light to his legend, and then the arc bent toward Destiny. 22 Qatar, heat rising from desert soil, and Lionel Andres Messi, now 35, not chasing completion, but arriving at it. Argentina began, not with a roar, but with gasp, a loss to Saudi Arabia, the kind of wound that leaks doubt into bones. Critics circled, headlines inked, but the captain remained still, eyes low, boots laced, and then he lifted them, one goal, then another, assists slicing air like acrobats, leads built carefully like pottery cupped in calloused hands. Against Mexico, he struck low and true, a laser through the fog. Poland - confidence, Australia - leadership, the Netherlands grit amid chaos, extra time, penalties, and always Messi guiding, walking first, scoring with the assurance of dusk, and then France, the final. A script to perfectly written to, not feel divine. Mbappe and Messi, past and future orbiting one another, in the galaxy of 120 minutes. And more, a goal, then another, then Mbappe's thunder. Sen, at full time, hearts stretched thin, souls short of breath, and then penalties. Messi stepped to the mark not as a captain, not even as a legend, but as a boy from Rosario, with a ball and a dream sewn quietly into his chest. Gold. Whispers turned into prayer, and when the final sparks settled, victory tears returned. This time, without sorrow, he walked no floated to the stage, to the trophy, wearing the bishte robe of tradition, symbol and silk draped over shoulders wide enough now to hold every hope ever handed to him. And there it was, the World Cup, lifted softly, firmly, as if he had always known it would rest in his palms, not screamed, not shaken wildly, just stand, only just, held like a secret kept too long. In that moment there was no noise, only reverence, as though football itself bowed. And Messi, he smiled, the shy boy, the quiet son, the flea who changed the game by never chasing it, now crowned, not by others, but by everything he built in silence, and stillness, and sublime. He no longer needs to run. There is no chase left, no spotlight to outrun, no critic to convert, because in silence, legacy grows taller than banners. It moves softer than applause, and now we find ourselves whispering back through his years, not because we must, but because we want to remember what it felt like to witness something so gently impossible. There are players who shine, and there are players who reflect something deeper. Still water, holding sky. Mess. I was always the latter. He never begged to be seen. He arrived like morning expected, but never common. You didn't notice the match begin. You noticed when he touched the ball. There was economy in his step, a quiet greeting for celebration, but for precision, the curl of a pass placed with fingertip imagination, the drop of a if gravity itself were listening, the sprint that wasn't a sprint, but a dance with a tempo only his feet could hear. How do you explain that kind of rhythm? How do you say grace without sound? You feel it didn't hush before a dribble, in the breath held on the edge of the box, in the gasp that escapes not when a goal explodes. But when time slows and You realize you've just seen something eternal pass through now. He gave us those moments again. Again and again, not loud, not planned, but as if plucked from some wellspring deep inside him. It is not just the numbers, though they defy most comprehension. It is not just trophies, though he cradled dozens as though they'd been waiting for him all along. It is in how his genius never asked to be admired. It simply arrived, polished by repetition, delivered without need for decoration. Sometimes the most radical thing is not to demand attention, but to earn it effortlessly. He reminded us that greatness does not have to be loud, does not need fury or fire. It can blush, it can bow, it can look at the earth even while lifting the sky. And after all the matches, after boots muddied in dozens of nations, after jerseys drenched in tears, both joyful and bitter, he still spoke in the same tone, soft, measured, grateful. Not once did he crown himself. He let time do that, and now time has. Look back at the boy in Rosario who practiced with bricks and shadows, who injected hope with trembling hands each night. At the youth in La Masia, said almost nothing for months, but said everything when the ball came near. At the teenager who scored, surrounded by giant sand, then lowered his head as if embarrassed to steal attention. At the man who played with feet that made the world dream a little bigger and fear a little less. And now he walks slower, he smiles more, he posts pictures of his sons, of his wife, of beach days and backyard goals. The stage fades slightly, and yet his music continues, not in shout, but in legacy. In every boy who draws the number 10 on his back, not to become him, but to remember that quiet can conquer whole worlds. In every match where subtlety is more dangerous than speed. In every child dribbling alone in fading light, who learns that even the smallest can hold the largest dreams. He will retire someday. Quietly, no doubt, no grand drama, only a game played, a jersey folded, a hand waved toward the air. And then we will speak of Jim in poems, because numbers will never be enough. We will remember the way he moved like breath beneath a song, like moonlight slipping from one continent to another. And slowly he becomes memory, but not one of loss, memory like warmth still, present even after the flame is gone, because Lionel Messi was never just a footballer. He was a whisper that made the whole world lean closer.